let's discuss things as they come up, and we'll deal with it that way. Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about today is the DDS 5900 series. How many of you guys are familiar here with DIS? Okay, so we've got some experience in the room. So Danish Interpretation Systems was a company that Shure bought 7 or 8 years ago now. The DDS 5900 series is a holdover from DIS that Shure is still going to be supporting. It is kind of our entry-level discussion system. And what I'd like to point out is that this is a discussion system as opposed to a conference system. And we'll talk about why as we go through that. So what are the key features of the 5900 series? It's great sound quality, very fast and easy setup. There's very few components in this system, and it does allow for multi-language operation. These are the core components. You can see this. There isn't a huge product offering in the 5900 series, but for what you need it to do, it fits the bill. Okay. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the DIS CCU, and this product is going to come up a couple of times today. This is the main brain for the 5900 series as well as the MXC series, and this changes depending on the feature license that's put on it. So if you purchase this product to use it with 5900 series, no feature license is required. If you want to upgrade your system to the MXC system, then you put on a feature license that unlocks the ability to run the MXC product. And just so you know, as we go forward, if you do put the feature license 6000 on this to run the new MXC product, you can switch back and forth between the 5900 series or the MXC product. Okay, it doesn't become one or the other once you've set it up. So this unit operates as the main power source. Puts out 125 watts of power from the back of the unit. There's 4 chains that you can power. But that is dynamic 125 watts, so it's spread. If you're using 10 watts on one, you've got 115 on the other 3, depending on how you run your chains. Is everyone familiar with DCS LAN? Have you heard that conversation before? Heard that term? This is what we use in the 5900 series and the MXC product for power and control and audio transport. It's all on the DCS LAN. You'll see these units in front of you are all using just one cable. That's the same setup for the 5900 series. The CCU also handles all of the auto mixing. It handles all of your control, and it gives you your system interface as well for all control of the unit. 2 audio outputs and 8 inputs on this unit. Sorry, 8 out and 2 in, excuse me. Analog inputs, so XLR inputs on this. Kind of baked into that CCU is the browser. This allows you to assign seat numbers and names to your units, select your operating modes, turn your microphones on and off, and then have your request list displayed as well. Core components of this is the 5980p, which is the portable unit. Gives you, I still love this phrase, touch button technology. I'm not sure what else a button would be other than a touch button, but it does have a speak and request button as well as a configurable button that you can set depending on what the unit is. It's got your headphone jack with volume control for translation if you're listening to a separate language, or to be used for assisted listening. If you've got someone hard of hearing, they can put in headphones and listen through that output as well. You've got your XLR lockable unit on as well. If you want to see these, we do have a system set up out in the hallway as well after. It's got your loudspeaker built in, and then it's got your LAN connections. With the 5900 series, there is no in and out. There's just 2 connections. Whereas with MXC, you have to worry about the route. So once you purchase the 5980p, then you can purchase some overlays. You can get a chairman overlay, interpreter overlay, delegate speak and mute, or just a delegate speak. When these overlays are applied on the unit, that's how you change its function from a chairman or an interpreter or a delegate, depending on what overlay is installed. The 5900F is the flush mount version. This allows you to install it in a desk or credenza or whoever you want to install it and have nothing else on the desk. It's available in 2 options as well. One is the 5921 speech, and the other one is the 5981 with its speech and interpretation. And again, these are dependent on the overlays that you purchase to change the function of these units to either be interpreters or delegates, or a delegate with mute. You can change all of those options. The microphones that are available, we do have the new mini shotgun available. All of the microphones are available in 16 or 20 inch with bicolored LEDs as well. Now, something worth pointing out, these are still not Shure capsules on the 5900 series, but MXC does. That is one of the biggest changes about MXC, is going from the DIS microphone to a Shure product. Something you're going to get tired again of hearing about today is DCS LAN, but we need to kind of reiterate it over and over and over and over. In the past, we have said for all of these systems that we recommend Shure cables. We are now calling it a requirement. If you install one of these products without our cables, when you call in for service, the first question you're going to get asked is, what cables did you use? If you didn't use ours, you're going to be asked to change to our cables. The reason for that being, all of our cables are tested individually, and DCS LAN is not standard Ethernet. These cables can be running 300-400 watts by the time you're in a big system. If you're using smaller gauge wire or cheaper cables, the system's just going to fail, and you won't know why. It'll be because you have one too many units on, now you're pulling a little bit too much power and the cables just can't handle it. So what we're saying for now is that any structured cable, if you have to do a pull and make your own cable, you're going to terminate those to female connectors, and then you're going to use our male-to-male patch connectors to connect to the system. Okay? We can give you the specifications, and there is a white paper for the best cable practicing, but we do publish the specifications, so we can give you that. And what it really comes down to is the gauge of the wire. You need a lot of copper, and you need a shield to carry this kind of power down the line, and that's where the failure will occur. Okay, there is a lot of other accessories available in the 5900 series, whether it be junction boxes or power inserters, signal repeaters to keep refreshing the line, the chain, excuse me. The DCS LAN switcher to use to link rooms or have redundant controllers. You've got audio output units for infrared, and then redundant controllers as well, so in case you want to do a dual backup, you can with these systems as well. There's also many different styles of headphones, interpreter headsets, the stethoscope. If you don't want to have anyone disturbing their headdress or hairstyles, they can use the stethoscope style headphones. And then the mono ear clip, where someone still wants to be able to hear the floor, but they're also running interpretation. So let's just give you a little idea of a standard system. This might be actually a little bigger than standard, where you've got your infrared signal generator, where you may have 50 or 100 delegates just listening to the presentation. Then you've got your chairman and 4 delegates there, all with headphones to listen to interpretation. And then on another chain, just 2 interpreters that are going to be in another room. I know I went through that quickly, because this is an easy system, right? Really popular for rental. I think there's a few, 10,000 of these floating around Washington, something like that. So it is a very popular system, but it is kind of our entry level, and it's going to be supported for a few more years, but based on the next product I'm going to show you, you'll see why this might be nearing the end of the road. So, do you guys have any questions on this product before I move on? Yeah, and if you'd like, you can hit your microphone in front of you there.
What's the infrared used for?
So if you were doing let's say a parliamentary style meeting, and you had 80 delegates up in the balcony, you can use the infrared system, aim it up at the balcony, and everyone can just grab headsets on the way in, and then they can choose which language they're going to listen to, whether it be, if they're running it in French and English. In Canada, for me, every single meeting that we have has to be done in French and English by law, right? So interpretation is much more important in other parts of the world than it might be in the US. But yeah, you would have that for the balcony, and then allow everyone to listen to perhaps the floor and a language, right? Or just assisted listening so that they can hear it where they're sitting. Anthony?
Ben, we've elsewhere in the world we've used it quite a bit for almost silent conference setup, where because of you might have a plenary in the morning with one big room, and they don't want to hire two separate breakout rooms for the afternoon. Just keep it open. There's maybe have two screens at the front, and then if you're in finance, you're listening on channel A, watching that thing. If it gets really boring, you switch over, you watch the salespeople, and you go back. So if it's any more interesting, great, stick on it.
How many channels can you send over the IR?
Up to 32.
Okay.
Floor plus 31.
Yeah, okay.
Just based on the interpretation language. But in theory, you could have, I don't know, north, south, east, west, and people sit in the middle of the room and turn around, whichever presentation they want to look at.
Right.
It's one way of doing it.
Good. Tim?
Ben, you mentioned on the microphones that the legacy 5900 still has the DIS microphones. Is that also with the exception of the shotgun? Is that
The shotgun is the Shure shotgun.
and that's
Yeah.
interchangeable with existing MX
No.
412s or not, the capsule part of it?
The capsule's interchangeable, but it uses a different pin configuration on the 5900 series. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
So to reiterate, we actually can use,
I'm sorry, I can't hear you at the back.
so to reiterate, we actually can use any microflex on a 5-inch gooseneck. If we're purchasing
Right.
the R189 shotgun,
Right.
we could replace it with any capsule we want.
Correct. Yeah. You can turn your mic off now, Todd.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Any other questions, guys, before we move on? No? Okay. So, next thing we're going to talk about is Microflex Complete Wireless. And again, as we're moving up the range here, you're going to open up a few more applications and a little more complexity. So, what is MXCW? It's an integrated wireless audio system designed for the conference and meeting space. Quick and easy setup, delivers intelligible audio, improving meeting productivity. That is the only tagline I will read verbatim today. So what is the features and benefits? It's secure. Gives you AES encryption as well as a browser login that can be password protected. Very simple setup. It literally is power on and go. All of the 640 units can be reconfigured to different participant roles. You can run up to 125 units off of a single access point. It has automatic interference detection and avoidance that we're going to go over in a little bit. Extended runtime. Shure, as we all know about Shure, they are very conservative. We list an 11-hour runtime for these products. It's more like 12 or 13, but you're not going to run into problems if you say 11 hours. And it's interoperable. It's analog or digital ins and outs, and we'll talk about that. So this is the complete unit. This is the complete system. This is everything that is available, with the exception of a shotgun microphone that did not get added to this slide, but we'll go over that later on as well. So this is the brain. This is the MXCW APT, the access point. As I mentioned, it'll control up to 125 of the wireless conference units. It operates in 5 gig or 2.4 gig frequencies, and it has automatic frequency coordination. The interference detection and avoidance, I'm going to talk a little bit later about how that works. It's 128-bit encryption from AES, 1 analog in and out on the actual APT itself, and then 10 Dante ins and outs as well for routing. Most configuration can be done from the front of the APT. You can see the LCD display on this unit up here. Why is that important? I think for a lot of rental applications, it'll be very nice to just take this unit in, plug in the APT to a switch, and you're going to power on the units and just go. You're not going to do much configuration. It's when you're into a more complicated setup that you're going to want to go into the GUI to set things up, but we're going to show that later on as well. It is a single network connection, just PoE for power and data and everything, so very simple to deploy. As I mentioned, there's only one base unit, the MXCW 640. It does have selectable participant roles, so you can change it from a chairman, a delegate, a listener, and an ambient. There is dual delegate coming, and there's going to be a few more options coming as more firmware is released. To give you an example of the firmware, Recently, we decided to add voting to these units. So immediately, as soon as we added voting, New Zealand Parliament freaked out because we added 3 and 5 button voting. 3 button being yes, no, and abstain. And New Zealand freaked out because they're using these already, and you're not allowed to abstain from a vote in New Zealand. So the next day, we had a new firmware update to remove it. So now it's 2 button, 3 button, and 5 button voting, and you can select that way. So I think as we go forward with this, you're going to see more and more things get unlocked as they realize the potential of these. There's a lot of horsepower in these units, and we're not using anywhere near all of it yet. So if you have an idea for something you'd like to see in the firmware, don't hesitate to send it in, and we'll send it to the guys and see if we can make it happen. So it's got your touchscreen display, which gives you configuration, control, and all your meeting information. It's got your built-in loudspeaker for program audio. It's got an NFC card slot for participant identification. We'll talk about how that works in a little bit as well. Micro USB on the back. If you're in a marathon meeting and you need to plug this unit in to keep it going, you're in hour 12 and you're getting near the end, you can plug in any standard micro USB wall wart and it'll keep it running for you. It also has a TRRS connection on the back, the tip ring sleeve connection that we'll talk about in a few minutes for remote participant. And then it's got 2 3.5mm headphone jacks with volume control, one on either side for assisted listening or interpretation. The network charging station, we have a couple at the back if you'd like to take a look at them. It does accommodate 10 batteries. It's got all your LED indicators to show the life of the battery. It is network controllable, so on the GUI you'll be able to take a look at battery life, how many times that battery has been cycled, what the health of the battery is as opposed to just the charge. It gives you the option to put them in storage mode for safe transport. It reduces them, it allows them to discharge to about 30% for safe airline travel, as well as battery health while they're being stored. It's tabletop, rack, or wall mountable. You can get a half charge in about an hour and a half and a full charge in about 4 hours. This is the battery itself. It's a 3-cell lithium ion. Again, 11-hour runtime conservatively. Keep in mind these batteries are included with the purchase of every 640. You know, while it would be a good idea to have a few spares on hand, if you order 20 MXC 640s, you do not need to order 20 batteries. I would order somewhere around 5 for a 20-unit system just to have some spares around, and if you end up in a massively long meeting, you can swap some batteries out on the fly. An integrated status button, so you can just push the button if they're sitting on the desk. There's batteries in front of all of you there. If you want to take a look, you can press the button and see what the battery life is. The gooseneck microphone options. Now this is important to note that these are Shure capsules. They're from the MX range. So they are interchangeable. If you're already using MXW, you can take the capsule off. They do ship with a standard cardioid, but if you wanted an Omni or a super cardioid, you can change those out. And we did just add the mini shotgun to the range. There's a few of those around the room if you'd like to take a look at them. I really like the shotgun because I don't like having to lean into the microphone, so the shotgun enables me to be lazy and stay back from it. It's got locking 10-pin connector. We're not using all the pins right now, but it is future-proof, so perhaps as we add more features, we're going to use those pins. Has CommShield technology that allows for complete RF immunity, so you're not going to be hearing your phone ticking through the system as you get a text message. Any questions on that stuff, guys? I feel like I'm blazing through this, so if anyone wants to stop me, please do. And we're going to get a chance to listen to this in just a few minutes. We'll get it fired up. So what kind of applications are we looking at with this product? So if we have a structured meeting where you need chairman control, we need to set some permissions and speak limits, we can do that through the MXCW. And then we can identify our participants with the NFC card slot. For a flex space or a mobile meeting, again, all of these units can be changed from chairman to delegate to listener, so you don't have to have a bunch of SKUs in your inventory. It's got the interference detection and automatic avoidance, and then your analog in-out on the APT itself so that you can plug into a house system for voice lift or reinforcement. If you're doing a historic venue where you can't be running any cables or power, you can simply deploy these with with one switch and an access point. No other power is required. And then it gives you both your microphone and your sound reinforcement in the room. give you a little idea of a standard system at a glance. You're going to have your Dante network running through the switch. You've got your laptop hooked up to the switch as well. With the analog in and out on the access point, you could connect a separate handheld microphone that you can route through the system. And then you're going to have your analog output again to some powered loudspeakers or the house system for additional sound reinforcement, and then your wireless conference units. I mentioned earlier that there's a TRRS input on the back of the 640. This is going to allow for a remote participant. It's coming with the next firmware update, where if Tim is late for the meeting, but I know he's in his car, he's stuck in DC traffic, I'm going to call Tim and plug him into the back of one of these 640 units. Now Tim owns that unit, so his mic is always active. It'll be up to Tim to mute himself, but he can now hear and participate in the meeting through that connection. Yes?
Is that controlled through an app on the mobile device?
No, it's just a standard phone connection. Yeah, so we would rely on Tim to mute himself. Otherwise, we're going to be hearing him through every unit through the whole meeting, right? Which could be problematic. The chairman could also mute him, right? Or mute his station. So there is the option for that. It's just for a standard conference like this, it would certainly add some flexibility. Yeah.
With the audio input in your diagram, you showed a wireless microphone system going to that.
Yep.
Does the chairman also have the ability to mute and unmute that microphone?
No.
Okay.
So that is controlled outside the system because it's just an input.
And is that something that a firmware update will eventually resolve? Just the example being a city council meeting and the person with the wireless mic,
well, I think so. Right now, the administrator could remove that from the floor mix, right? Just by clicking in the GUI, you can remove it from the floor mix. But I don't know if there's any plans for a mute button for that input.
Okay.
Right? It would have to be controlled through the GUI.
Not yet, we can take notes of it.
Yep. Yes.
For the TRS remote participant connection, is the user on the phone going to only hear floor, or can you route like a language channel there?
Yeah, you could route anything. So because of the way the Dante channels are routed, you could route anything to that unit, and then he would have the option to select the channel.
Or the person sitting at the unit.
Right.
The remote participant.
Right.
Choose the language.
Right.
Cool.
Yeah. Any other questions, guys? Yes.
In that system, does the loudspeaker built into the unit provide voice lift, or is it just for program audio?
Yeah, no, it provides voice lift.
Okay.
Yeah. And we'll turn them on in a second and you guys can hear them. So also in this, built into the APT is the GUI. This gives you, there's 3 different views: the admin, chairman, or display only. Admin allows you to control pretty much everything. The chairman allows you to control the meeting, and then the display only would be literally just the display for voting, speaker lists, voting results, that kind of thing. So let's talk a little bit here about DFS. So when people hear 2.4 and 5 gig, they immediately think Wi-Fi. These do not operate in the Wi-Fi band. When we initially fire these units on, what's going to happen is the APT is going to jump on the first 2.4 open frequency it can find for 60 seconds. And while it's on that 2.4 channel, it's going to be scanning the 5 gig DFS channels, which are weather radar, which are only used by military and airport applications. The rules for DFS are you have to listen to every channel. If it's free for 60 seconds, you're allowed on it. If there's any interference at all, you have to get off. So we did a demo 2 weeks ago beside Pearson Airport in Toronto. Incredibly busy part of the world for airports. We had 14 open DFS channels, completely wide open, right? And at 3 o'clock every day, they would shut down because Toronto was sending something. That airport was sending something over those channels. So in the middle of our meeting, it just switched, and no one paid any attention. No one knew what was going on. And then when they were clear again, it switched back. If you'd like, we can do a tone generator here in a minute, and I can force it to switch channels, and you'll never hear it. So it's always scanning the environment to find an escape route, is the way I like to think of it. So it stays on one solid channel, and then if there's any interference, it jumps, and we won't know that it's there. This is what the page looks like in the GUI, showing the wireless environment. Green is wide open, orange means there's some traffic, and then red means there's a lot of traffic on that channel. If you do have some frequencies that you know Reagan is using this particular RF channel, you can just deselect it, and we're just going to stay completely away from it and just never bother with it. Any questions on that, guys? Okay, well, why don't we take our batteries, and you can pop them in the unit in front of you. Something to note as well with these units, they remember their state. So if they were in an on state when the batteries were removed, then they'll come back on. If they were in an off state when the battery was removed, they'll stay off. And to be completely honest, I can't remember which way these were. So if your unit in front of you is not coming on, there's a button on the bottom near the front brass plates that you have to hold for about 4 seconds to turn them on. So you'll just see a red light as they start to come on, and then the Shure logo will pop up for you. So start to finish with this product, if you plug in an access point and turn your units on, you can be passing active audio in under a minute. One of the things that the team in Europe likes to talk about is how this can be used by the tea lady. So at 3 o'clock when they have their afternoon tea, a lady comes in with a cart and hands out scones and tea, and the idea being she should be able to roll a cart into a room and deploy this. And we have really ended up with a product that is that simple. So you can see now I'm passing audio through the wireless system.
can the NFC cards also hold like priority information, like any other type of info other than the names?
No.
Okay.
So for MXC, they can.
Okay.
For MXCW, for the wireless, it is just identification.
Okay, thank you.
The
Well, if I just want to, have we added the Vox activation mode yet to the firmware for the MXCW? And if not, do we know when?
no.
Okay.
No, Vox is not. And
Do we know any timing information on that? Because at the university level, that has been a very, very hot request. So
Okay.
so. Are you going to go to the group mix screen then?
I sure can.
Just because I don't think a lot of people have seen the GUI.
Yeah.
So.
So there's your mixes here. Like right now, hardly any of them are set up to show anything because we're just doing a standard one language meeting. Right?
Mhm.
We don't have any program audio that we're going to route through here, but we certainly could.
Mhm.
Right? If you were bringing in outside audio from one of the inputs, even just background music for breaks in the meeting, you would route that audio here as well.
Mhm.
Right?
No, but I like that point about using one of the MXCW 640s as an
Right.
interpreter station, just using the group mixes to assign that. That's a
Yeah, so
that hadn't
because
that
it
occurred
is
to me.
10 Dante ins and outs, you
Mhm.
can choose where that signal flow
Mhm.
is going, which group it's going to, which group it's not going to,
Mhm.
and just set it up that way. So
Cool.
you could have up to essentially 8 channels of interpretation if you
Mhm.
wanted, right? Because you'd be using 8 of the Dante flows,
Sure.
right? 8 of the Dante channels to do that. So, you can have up to 8 open mics at once. Not sure why you would ever have 8 open mics. That stops being a meeting and becomes a riot at about 4 mics, I think. But the option is there for you as well. Can you turn on
Yeah.
your sound generator?
Yeah, I would like to see that.
No.
Hey Ben, I've got a tone shift.
Now, is it just scanning the one channel at a time? That's what it
Yes.
appears to be, and then it just kind of cycles through them,
Yep,
right? Okay.
cycles through.
All right. It's also because you have it sorted by channel quality, and you basically we're watching, yeah, even the
Right.
channel we're currently on just shifted way back in the queue. So
Yep. So now it'll, as it listens here, eventually it'll make its way over to that. Having more questions.
Ben, are we going to discuss using, especially in light of what we're seeing right now, using multiple access points in a single facility and how this might affect all of this?
So the access points, doing multiple access points isn't going to affect the RF quality,
Okay.
right? What it allows you to do is these units, you can set them so that they would be married to an access point, or they would look to any access point. Actually, if we go into the unit, you can deselect your access point. So if I wanted this one to be changed from this unit to the access point at the demo table at the back of the room, I can disengage and then reconnect. In the GUI itself, you can set it to either automatically connect to the last access point that it was on, or to scan and find a new one. So if you had a multi-use facility, perhaps with a a folding door in the middle of the ballroom, you could put an access point in either side and then call it A and B, or Tiffany room and whatever room, and then you can just select which access point you're gonna go to. Another cool feature is if you're having a sensitive meeting, perhaps a board meeting, something like that. Doing that.
But just to put a fine point on it, for large deployments, right? Let's say we did 100 channels in this room, and I want to do 100 channels in another room, and I'm looking at this.
Right.
How I guess I just don't understand how that's managed. I mean, I understand how we attach to the different access points, right?
Yeah.
But I guess I don't understand the bandwidth consumption of the system itself and how that works.
Well, because there's these channels have multiple channels in them.
Okay.
Right. So there's lots of room.
Okay.
Right. And again, you're only having maybe 4 open microphones too,
Mhm.
right? So there's that consideration as well.
Okay.
But there really is there's no concern there.
Okay, yeah, and that's what I've been kind of feeding
Yeah.
back to my clients, but at the same time, I'm just kind
Yeah,
of
fair enough.
hoping a
Yeah.
prayer kind of. Okay, so.
Jason, similar to MX setting as well, so we have multiple access points that we're not, I'm hiding behind Chris. Again, managing the power of those access point settings
Yeah.
as well, to if you're trying to stack multiple access points together in one area.
Oh, and that makes complete sense, and I would figure would be part of the best practices. Yeah, so, okay.
I think we had a question.
it's not.
That's kind of what Michael was speaking to. It's not going to really report as a,
Right.
you know.
You're not going to see it on your. The sure guys that we wanted to discuss.
The chairman view on the screen.
Yeah.
So if you are using this, there you go. So this you could hand to an end user on a laptop or something. Or thanks. Freaking Canadians.
We're taking over. Look out. Look out.
Look who.
Can you scroll down there, please, Ben? Left-hand side, sit voting.
Yeah, so then this gives you the option. I started a vote earlier from my chairman unit up here. You can also start a vote from here as well. The 5 button, I like the 5 button. I think it's funny. But I really, really like it. I like it. I don't like it, and I really, really don't like it. So.
It's funny.
And then if we go to the
can that actually save to the units then, or that seems like it's a temporary?
Well, no, if if it's set to seat 1 and
Yeah.
you turn the unit off and I leave this on, right,
Mm-hmm.
it'll save that unit. Has
Okay.
that name.
Just to clarify, it will save it depending on which access permissions you're given. So
That-
when
I
we
think-
have
okay,
the-
yeah.
You do need to be very specific on
Okay.
that. Yeah.
Okay.
So earlier you showed that there are 8 slots a month.
Your mic's not on.
Any thoughts about adding a shorter length now that we have the shotgun?
Well, I think
But so I'm sorry, but for MXCW, can we this is
those are interchangeable.
okay. Well, so that I guess that's okay. So
Yep.
so that, okay.
So any MXC mic in front of you here is also, it's the exact same mic for the MXCW.
Okay, because I thought you just said there was a 16 and the 20.
Yeah,
I'm just making sure. Okay,
Shotgun
great.
is so new, I keep forgetting.
That's
about it,
fine.
so- But you could pop that unit, that microphone out and put it in the
Okay.
MXCW and you'd be fine.
Great.
Jason Dreyer, please take your seat.
Can I sit here with you, sir?
Yeah, absolutely.
Give me a mic for a second.
Yeah, after you.
So everybody in this room have a business card of some sort that can drop off. We're going to be raffling off a couple of things. I want to be fair. So if you have a business card, if you could leave it on the table, I'll pick it up. Jason, you're excluded. Chris, you're excluded. You can write it on something. Great. Okay, just drop it up here if you wouldn't mind at the break. We ready?
All right. Yeah. All right. That blows that theory out of the water. All right. Yeah, totally. You're right. I was so not close to anything. It was. Okay. Start. It's all about the little wins in life.
Can I ask you a quick question before we move on?
Absolutely.
I just remembered while I was away. The MXCW, is there any discussion of internal onboard recording as opposed to using the audio out or the dog out?
No, it will. No, it'll always be out. It's like, yeah. Real quick, just to clarify, there was a question about microphones. And the microphones that we have, this is a hack slide that we didn't quite finish, which is why we didn't show it. But today, being focused on our reps and more the heavy user designer and end user folks that use this product, this is just a really quick snapshot of what you're looking at when it comes to the microphone options. And now this is specific to 5900. So when we're talking about 5900, remember you've got the GM series, and then you've also got the MX series. And then when you go to MXCW, you'll have the MXC series microphone. So if you are specifying 5900, you do have a separate set of microphone options to use. And this is specific to the flush mount. And I think if we back up, we didn't have it in there, did we? I thought we had the other slide in there. Oh, we didn't? Okay. Wow, this thing is hopping. There's the existing DIS 3-pin, and then the MX is a 6-pin, and the MXC, if you pull the mic out, is a 10-pin. So there is a difference between MX series and MXC series microphones, just to clarify. And with that, we'll turn it over to Vanessa. What we're going to go through here is a really high-level just review of MXC product that'll take us probably a few minutes before lunch, around noon. Tim, is that right? Ish. So by all means, feel free to answer questions. And then after lunch, what we'll do is we're actually going to go a little bit deeper onto the parts and pieces of it. But this is just going to be kind of a high level. If you've not seen MXC before, then this is just going to kind of give you here's the parts, the pieces from the legacy DIS product to where we are today in MXC. Does it work?
Does it work?
I don't know. We'll find out.
Thank you, Michael. All right, so what we're going to do is dive into MXC. As Michael mentioned, we're just going to do a very high-level overview of the product. You'll see in front of you various versions of the portable stations. On the back table, we also have some of the flush mount and modular variants. At the next break or during lunch, maybe you would like to take a minute and take a look at that gear back there. We're happy to walk you through it and answer any questions. So let's kick it off. So essentially, what we're going to be talking about, again, is just the product portfolio for MXC, the Microflex Complete Wired Solution that we are here to talk about today. So the legacy that we have comes to us from DIS. So essentially, we had this product portfolio that we inherited when we purchased the DIS product company about 8 to 10 years ago or so. And this is kind of what it looked like for the 6000 series. So I don't know if anyone's familiar with this, but you know, we had a number of great products and solutions that were kind of custom made for different applications and different needs of our customers. And what we did was basically take a look at this and figure out what we needed, what our customers needed, what the market was looking for, and really kind of streamline that product portfolio a bit, so that we're really offering, you know, the bulk of the solutions for the customers and their needs. So what you see here is we have the central unit, which is the same central unit that Mr. Ben talked about earlier with regards to the 5900 series. We'll touch on this in a minute, but essentially you can use this same central unit for MXC as well as 5900, and you just need essentially a feature license to open it up to work with the MXC series. We have our signs, which you see in front of me here, which are blank right now, but essentially you can program information onto these signs, participant names, etc. We have a group of portable tabletop units. So we have a 615 or a 620. There are 620s on each of the tables. There's also a 630 and a 640. We also offer flush mount versions of the 620 and 630. We'll dive into those in a second just so you can understand the differences. And we also have some modular variants. So if you have an application where maybe the flush mount is too large or you can't accommodate all of the hardware in that one location, you can remotely locate the modular interface box and then just basically have a gooseneck with a mic on and off button, maybe a loudspeaker based on your needs. We also have an interpreter station, which we'll touch on as well, and some goosenecks. And the goosenecks you should be familiar with. We just talked about those. So off to the races. Here we go. So the central unit essentially is the DIS CCU, and this is going to allow us to provide for, to control 250 stations out of the box. Powering is a different story. So this unit will power up to 50 of the wired stations. We'll talk a little bit about the requirements for powering later in this presentation, but essentially this is the DCS LAN that we're talking about here. So this is not an Ethernet connection. This is DCS LAN carrying data, bus, and power down the line. So we need to ensure that we're providing enough power on all of the runs that we're pulling off of this central unit. So you can expand this for up to 3,800 participants, and that is expandable with a license. And you have the ability to run 4 interpretation channels out of the box with this unit. If you need to do more, we have feature licenses available, but out of the box, again, you can power up to 50 units and you can provide for 4 interpreted languages with the system. Expandable, of course. There's a built-in web server, much like the MXCW product, much like 5900. So we have the ability to go in and make some of the main system adjustments right with the GUI itself. We don't have to download any software, which is a beautiful thing. You can make a lot of the adjustments either from the front panel of the central unit or go into that GUI really quickly by addressing into your browser the IP address of the unit. You have 8 analog outputs on the rear of this unit as well as 2 analog inputs. So if you need to interface with standard AV type equipment, you can do that with these ins and outs. And also new with MXC is the redundant cabling option. So if you need to ensure that if a unit fails, it doesn't impact the full integrity of your signal chain, the redundant cabling option is for you then. So again, you do require the feature license 6000 to open up this central unit to work for MXC. So very important to note that the central unit and the feature license 6000 will allow you to use it for MXC. So the portable units, as I mentioned, we have a 615 or a 620. We're really just talking about the 620 here today. We do have a 615 which offers all of the same features as the 620 with the exception of the NFC card. So there are stations there in front of you if you want to take a look at them, but essentially the 620 gives you the ability to configure the station as a chair or a delegate. And again, that can be done through the GUI, the web server application. You have the ability to utilize the NFC cards with these stations, as well as run a dual delegate for interpretation, and there's Braille overlay built onto the stations as well for anybody that's visually impaired. The 630 is the step up from the 620, offers a little bit more features, in this case 5-position voting. So if you need to do voting on the station, you would need to have a 630 at the very least. The 640 itself is the fully fledged, all-encompassing conferencing station. So this unit itself will give you a touchscreen display, so you have the ability to access some of the features of the meeting, and hopefully you guys can see those in front of you and take a look at them there. But essentially for the portable variants, these are the main units that we're talking about here. So 620, a 630, and a 640, one including voting, and then always the 640 is going to include that touchscreen control on your station itself. Flush mount variants, so we have a 620 and we have a 630. So the 620 is the more entry-level flush mount solution. This one does not include any voting, so if you need to mount a station into a table or a desk, you would need to, and you need to provide voting for your customer, you would need to use the 630-F unit, which is going to give you that voting capability and functionality. In terms of the modular units, so you can see we have a couple items up on the screen here. There is a modular interface unit, which is the MXC MIU. And essentially that is the unit that is allowing us to connect either the FS or the FL boxes to this unit and inject them or add them onto the DCS LAN. So the DCS LAN, or the cabling from the central unit, would come into the modular interface box, and then from there you would connect your FS or your FL model to that unit with a HDMI cable, essentially, and that allows you to have those modular boxes, maybe in a dais, maybe it's a location where you can't put a fully fledged flush mount solution in there, but essentially that gives you the ability to add those units in as you need to. So the FS unit gives you a speak and function button right on the unit, and you can of course attach a gooseneck to all of these variants that we're talking about here. And the FL only changes in the capacity of adding a loudspeaker directly to your location there. So those are the main differences that you have there, both of them absolutely requiring that MIU box to be part of the DCS LAN or the MXC product portfolio. There's an XLR input on the MIU box as well, so you can add a wired microphone or a wireless microphone receiver to this as you connect it to this unit. It does require you to switch it to either being with the FS or the FL, so the modular unit, or the wireless microphone or wired microphone mode via the XLR connection, essentially just allowing you to interject those onto the DCS LAN. Any questions on that? Just another way to do a flush mount microphone for this series. Crystal clear. Moving along. So we have our interpreter unit, which I think we have one in the back station. Mr. Moore is nodding yes. So essentially this is a unit that was designed to ISO 20109 standards, and it is certified. I think we are one of the very few interpreter stations to be certified for this. It's a very, very long list of requirements that are stipulated to be certified by the ISO in this regard. So essentially what this is doing is this is allowing us to bring in the floor channel or an interpreted channel from another interpreter and then send that audio out as another channel that would then be available to our delegate or our chair participants in that particular meeting. So you have 8 relay buttons built into this. There is an LCD display with touchscreen technology built into it. You have the ability to program 3 outgoing languages, which you can define for your application. There is an interpreter headset that is available as an accessory. You could use a gooseneck and standard headset if you'd like to with this station. But there is a loudspeaker built into the back of the unit itself, and that's really designed for the interpreter booths, which typically have a plate of glass that these units are set up against so that the audio kind of reflects back into the listener, and they're hearing the floor audio or the audio that they're going to then interpret into out. You can use NFC cards with this unit, so you have the ability to have all of your personalized settings be programmed onto the card so they know when you walk in and you log in, you're Vanessa and you are listening to English and you're translating to English or something like that. So essentially you have the ability to kind of create settings and recall those as you need to for different interpreters. There's also Braille labels on the unit, as well as some audible cues that can be used for individuals that need those type of audible cues for their position. And moving along, we were talking about gooseneck microphone options here. So these are all what we just talked about with MXCW. So we have our 16 and 20-inch goosenecks available in single or dual flex, and then we also have our new little guy, the 406 MS, which is on a couple of the stations out there, which is the mini shotgun on a 6-inch gooseneck. And essentially, just like Ben indicated earlier, these are Microflex capsules. These are our microphones, and we're pretty proud of that fact. It definitely enhances the intelligibility of any meeting environment. And essentially, these can be interchanged with existing Microflex capsules. You do get a cardioid out of the box, but if you'd like an Omni, maybe for an ambient microphone, or a supercardioid or something else on your gooseneck itself, you can interchange those as needed. It's a locking 10-pin connector, as we just talked about. We're hoping to use some of those additional pins for future advancement and future additions to the product line. The CommShield technology that's built into it will prevent any type of GSM or RF immunity. So if your cell phone is close to your unit, of course you're not going to hear that dit through the system, which is a great feature, good thing to have. So the name signs themselves are part of the DCS LAN, so you can daisy chain them into the system. That's what we've done up here, and later on this afternoon we'll give you kind of a preview of a city council meeting just to get you an idea of how this could be used in a real world example. But these are e-paper signs. Essentially they are dual-sided, so you have the ability to provide different information to the listeners or to the participants than you do to people that are on the other side. You program that as you would like to. It is 1900 by 460 pixels, 4-bit grayscale. It is powered off of the DCS LAN, so of course if this is connected to the unit, you can upload information to this, but as soon as you disconnect it, all of that information that you've programmed to the sign will be retained. So that's a really great, powerful solution for maybe rental applications or portable meetings where you need to have a name sign in front of people, and the little cardboard tents don't need to be used in this particular application. So again, programmable with the central unit right through the GUI. You can also program this with Software 6000, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But essentially, it is capable for either a single participant or 2 participants. So if you have 2 people sharing a station, or you'd like to use one name sign for 2 individuals seated next to each other, you can actually split the display and indicate 2 individuals' names directly on the sign through the programming capability. It can be mounted on a table. It can be flush mounted as well. So there's 2 different variants. Yes, sir.
Are you able to have dynamic content on that, like a timer for how long somebody can speak, or is it just static images?
Currently, it's just static. Yeah.
It refreshes through that DCS LAN.
Yeah. Thank you. Good question. Any other questions on anything we just talked about?
By the way, that's not to say it's slow. It's not, it's quick as, it's not as quick as your grandma's CRT.
Sorry, can you go back over the single dual participant mode?
Mhm.
Does that mean like the name changes when you have a dual mic, two buttons, that the name would change in front of them?
Typically, no. Typically, you would just program one side of the sign with one individual's name, speaker A, for example, and then speaker B would be on the other side, or vice versa. So it would stay programmed, would stay static, you know, but you would have one unit dedicated to two different people speaking, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
Any other questions on that sign? Okay, so DCS LAN cabling, this is a proprietary cable that we require for use with the MXC systems. It is very important that this is utilized with the system because we are carrying data, we're carrying power and some proprietary info on this cable. A standard Ethernet cable is not recommended at all, and it will actually cause significant problems in the install over time. They may not be evident right away, but we have found that cables that are going in that are unshielded, or maybe cables that are shielded that have been terminated in the field, may not be fully up to what the system is requiring in terms of the connection of the system. So very, very important. Please use our cable. We do offer it in a number of different lengths, 9 lengths, from 2 feet all the way up to 150 feet. If you need to go longer, we recommend use female cables and then kind of utilize our cables for the longer runs. So again, keep...
What's the recommendation for cable runs that are too narrow for terminated RJ45 ends?
So you can't pull a pre-terminated cable.
Right.
We will cover this afternoon, but the quick answer is best practice is terminate it to a female in the field and then use an attached cable to jumper.
Any other questions on cabling? Okay. So we talked a little bit about feature license and the feature license 6000, which is required for the DIS CCU to be put into MXC mode. So essentially, once you've purchased your central unit and you purchase your feature license 6000, you can basically open up through the GUI this system to operate with the MXC units. If you connect a central unit to MXC stations that doesn't have this feature license, no worky. It's not going to work for you. So please keep in mind that that's required. For units up to 250, the standard feature license is just fine. If you need to do a super large conference, there is an additional feature license, or there's a feature license that you can purchase that will expand the unit, the system capacity, up to 3,800 conference stations. So it's a pretty big meeting, but essentially keep in mind if you're doing up to 250, standard feature license. If you're going to expand or you're going to have a conference that may someday include 500 or 251, the feature license 6000-3800, say that fast 3 times, is what you should use for that particular application. For interpretation, you do have 4 interpretation channels out of the box with the central unit and the feature license 6000. If you need to do additional channels of interpretation, you would need to purchase some interpretation licenses. So there is one that will give you the ability to have interpretation up to 8 channels, 16, and then 31 channels. And those are the licenses that you would need to expand the capability in terms of your interpretation capability. Questions on any of the feature licenses and when they're required? Awesome. So as I mentioned, there is a user interface that is hosted on the unit. So the GUI itself is browser-based, and it gives you the ability to set up, configure the system, as well as control the system. And this is going to give you basic system functionality without the need for any additional hardware. Software 6000 is a software package that is going to give you the ability to really kind of personalize some of the settings and open up some of the capability for the system to operate. So initially, with the 6000 series, with DIS, we had about 28 SKUs in terms of licenses and modules that would be used for software 6000. We've tried to clean this up a bit in similarly as we have done with the product portfolio, the hardware side. So we've now consolidated these down to 8 main SKUs that are needed for any type of advanced configuration and control of the MXC system. So basically the software 6000, the basic suite, when you purchase this, you're going to get a conference admin application, which is what we're calling the CAA, and then a conference user application, which is your CUA. This gives you the ability to do any number of things with the system, including the list on the right-hand side of the slide. So you can create meetings, you can create agendas, you can message, you can create microphone control with a synoptic or a mimic type view where you have a picture of the conference room and you're able to actually place and control microphones within that view. There's some speech timers built in. You can configure participants, who the participants are, what kind of role they have. Are they a delegate? Are they a chair? So those can be configured through the basic software 6000 suite. Interpretation can also be configured through this. Identification cards, so the NFC card, the chip cards that are going in the unit can be programmed through this unit as well. And then basically you have the ability to create custom reports, create reports based on how the meeting was run, how did the vote turn out, for example, and integrate some sort of third-party control with the system as well. There are additional add-ons, so if you need additional versions of the administration or the user application, you can add those on as additional licenses. There's also a conference display application so that you can display maybe the agenda, maybe who's speaking, the voting item, the voting result, and those are available separately as well if you need additional instances of those. If you have multiple users that are maybe running the meeting, maybe multiple displays in a conference room, you can add on additional licenses beyond the basic package of software 6000. Modules that are available, you can also purchase a vote module, which basically opens up the ability for someone to vote from a conference user application, so maybe a PC, so that they can vote remotely or they can vote outside of the unit itself. You can also have some advanced control in terms of your microphone capability. So you can do agenda control, speech timers, and there are 2 licenses available for that. So there's one that will give you control for up to 50 mics. And then if you're doing beyond 50, you would just need the standard software 6000-ADV. The ESI module will open up the unit for API control and streaming as an additional feature that you may purchase with this system. Kind of expanding the basic functionality of the software and giving you more and more control over the features within the unit.
Do the licenses need renewing, or are they permanent?
That's a good question. Right now they are set to be perpetual. So you would purchase at one time and then you would be done. You wouldn't need to purchase an upgrade or anything like that. Great question. Thank you. Any other questions on the software? It may seem sort of daunting, but it truly is not. Once we understand what is needed, at the application, what the customer is actually doing with the system, we can very easily define, which licenses and modules are needed to ensure that the meeting can be run in the mode and manner that the customer requires.
Vanessa, will we be going into System 6000 software in the afternoon session?
Jason, that's a great question. We will be diving
Okay,
into
great.
it later this
Awesome.
afternoon,
Thank you.
yes.
Are we going to be using software to do firmware upgrades, or is that going to be a separate function of like
So there is a different update utility for MXC right now. The firmware update utility, the FUU, is currently required. Did you do that on purpose? Don't worry, I have a few things in my pocket from last night. So yeah, so there is a different firmware update utility that is used to update the central unit and then all of the different units. It's not
It's not gonna be the same thing that we already have.
It's not through the update utility, no. Yeah. But it is straightforward. We can walk you through it, Todd, if you have any questions.
Is that FUU or FUNU?
Yeah.
Asking for a friend.
Asking for a friend.
What's the CDA license again? I think I missed that.
Okay, so that's it's a display application. So that allows you, somewhat similar to what we saw with MXCW, where we had the display screen, but this is a little bit more customizable, so you can basically show an agenda, you can view where you are on the agenda. The person that's running the meeting would be able to initiate a vote on agenda item, for example. You can kind of define it, you can add a mimic to it, so you have the ability to control microphones kind of based on the diagram of the room that you can place around. So it's basically just a display screen for the meeting participants to see what's going on. And you may need multiple instances of that. You know, you may need to have, like we have here in this case, 2. And we'll show you kind of what that looks like when we do this mock city council meeting in a little bit, I think, which might be after lunch, but essentially you can kind of define, or the user can kind of define what needs to be on those screens and what it looks like for other meeting participants.
You could even run a CDA potentially outside in the pre-function, so that could be carrying the agenda, so people could know when they need to be getting back into the rooms. In the government setup, it's, you know, if it's showing on there when the vote's going to take place, they know if they've got time for that last cigarette break, or they need to rush in quickly and save the world with their vote. You can do lots of different things with it. We'll play with it a wee bit later on for you.
Any other questions on software? Okay. So really quickly, a system at a glance. So we have here the central unit, and you can see that in this example, we're just showing you what it might look like if you had some portable stations attached to one of the 4 ports on the central unit, which are used for DCS LAN, daisy chaining, or redundant loop topology. So essentially here we have some 620s, some 630s on one chain. Maybe we have some flush mount units in a different location, which are daisy chained back to the central unit here. We have some interpreters, we have some modular stations, as well as some name signs on the DCS LAN as well. And you'll also see we have a switch here, so we're using another network protocol, so standard Ethernet, to interface with our web browser perhaps, or with Software 6000 to gain the ability to really customize features of the system for that application.
I guess I didn't, is the whole idea of recording just, is that not important to the market anymore?
You tell me. You know, there are analog outputs on the units,
Sure.
so you could interface with standard recording equipment.
But the idea of onboard recording, I know like years
Mm-hmm.
ago, it was like, oh my gosh, it needs to do this, and the market's changed obviously since I've been, yeah, that's why I'm wondering if no one really cares about it.
I know Anthony's going to jump
I
in
think,
here.
yeah, in some markets, I know in Europe, so in the UK, certainly France, Belgium, Holland, Germany, you have to have the audio recordings for local councils, etc. Sometimes in some countries that has to be built in with the metadata, so as well as the audio, you need to go to state who said comments X, Y, and Z. We've looked at the idea of having that built into our own package, but there are actually quite a lot of other options out there we can integrate with, so whether it's actually a hard drive or with some software these days, and your solution could be anything from literally $50 and a laptop up to tens of thousands, depending on what you want to do. So yeah, that's one thing we are looking at. At the end of the day, our product has to play with everything else in that bigger ecosystem. You can't have one box that does everything. So at the moment, it's not something we'll do in-house. But yeah, there are ways we can talk about how to achieve that if you need to get.
Vanessa, does the ESI with the streaming application, would that be digitally recorded? You could use that for some sort of digital recording. No.
If you had the third-party equipment.
It's a third-party output.
Yeah.
I mean, technically in here, obviously we've got the cameras up, which we'll talk about a bit later on, which is from the package from our friends at One Beyond. So that's streaming at the moment, and you've got the live, so you've also got the audio along with the video also. This is whether you want a separate audio recording. I mean, in certain applications, I know we've done installations where we have to have it in different languages. So you might have to have the floor, and then it's basically the main 6 UN languages: Arabic, Chinese, English, French, Russian, Spanish. So effectively recording 7 different streams of the same thing, depending on who needs to log in and listen to those archives later.
So is it streaming out through the 6,000? When you say the word streaming, are you talking like web streaming or?
The streaming at the moment is being done by the One Beyond kit. We'll
Yeah.
look at that this afternoon as part of the demo. But yeah, we've actually got a live stream going to YouTube, isn't it?
YouTube.
Yeah, right now. So you can, yeah, you don't even have to be here. You can sit in your office and watch this.
Yes.
We're glad you are here, though, just to be clear.
How many mics can you put on a single port in DISCU?
So that's a good question. It's really a function of how much voltage they're drawing and the cable runs. So there is, and we'll talk about this in a minute, there is a calculator that we have available on our website that actually allows you to plot, what your initial cable length is, right down to what model am I using. So the 640, as you could imagine, might draw some more power than, say, the 620 because there's a touch screen on it. So it does allow you to kind of define that, and then you can get really a good answer in terms of, do I need additional accessories, which we'll talk about this afternoon, power inserters or repeaters to kind of provide for more units on that one central unit.
Okay, second question about the port. When you do a redundant system, I assume you have to use 2 ports.
Correct, yeah.
You're doing like a closed loop.
Yeah.
So for this diagram, you would need 2 DISCCUs. You want to have that type of topology.
You would really only want one central unit. It's the one within any system. That's the main kind of brain or heart. You would use some of the accessories, maybe a junction box, maybe a repeater, to do any type of, if you need additional runs to provide more redundant loops. So you'd need more DCS LAN ports, essentially, and that you would achieve through those accessories.
We'll go through that.
Yeah.
Redundancy and cable calculation this afternoon and show a little detail on that for sure.
And there is a little accessory that you need to do any redundant cabling. It's just like a little inline device that you put in order to run that cabling back into the central unit. And we'll show that later. I think there was some kicking around. But we'll dive in, more advanced in terms of the setup and control of the system later on this afternoon. Great questions, though. Thank you. So a few applications, I'm sure you guys can think of more than we have here, but essentially a city council, which you guys will see later this afternoon. In these types of applications, you usually need to know who's speaking. It's usually a helpful thing. So what you could use is with this system programmable chip cards. So as you have your participants walk into the city council meeting, they could log into the system, they could drop their cards into the stations, and we would know who is participating in that particular meeting. You can also use the MXC signs to have names portrayed in this conference, this application. If you needed to do any sort of agenda or recorded voting, of course you would need additional functionality than what the main hardware can accommodate. So you would need to purchase some of the software and some of the voting capability within the licensing of the software 6000 itself. So just an idea of kind of how the system could be used. Another idea would be maybe an international conference. So we talked about 5900 this morning, we talked about MXCW, and now we're really kind of talking about full scalability with the system and flexibility to accommodate, more and more advanced type applications. So with this, perhaps, Antony's example of the UN, maybe we have 28 channels of interpretation with this type of system. MXC can definitely accommodate that with additional licensing. And we can also accommodate the agenda and voting control that we talked about, as well as maybe a display of the agenda for maybe the reception area or maybe the meeting room itself. Again, you would need to look to something like Software 6000 with the display licenses in order to accommodate that and provide that in this application. Third quick application would be a standard boardroom application, which maybe is a little bit more, not basic, but a little bit more entry level than, say, what we just talked about with the international conference. So this could be really quickly achieved with just most hardware. I mean, you could have participant IDs programmed, so you could have an identification card. People walk in, they can log into the meeting. That can be programmed outside of the software capability of the system. And maybe you want to run a quick vote, so you want to not record that. It's just, who's here, who's in favor. You could run that right on the station itself and not have any need for any sort of recording of that vote or logs of who voted which way or how that outcome was achieved. And that you can do just with the standard hardware itself. No need to add any additional software. And if you're doing any type of interpretation, maybe you have one gentleman who's coming in from Hong Kong for the meeting and you need to accommodate one channel of interpretation, you can do that right with the standard MXC system. No need for any advanced control or configuration at all. So just some ways that you can think about how the system could be used. I'm sure there's many more applications out there. Anybody have any examples of any applications where the system has been used or a system like it has been used that we haven't talked about here? I'm sure there's many.
We use it upstairs here in this facility in our tiered classroom.
Mm-hmm.
We host students here.
That's great. Thank you. So, of course, different ways that the system can be tailored to meet different types of applications and different levels of complexity.
What about courtrooms?
Courtrooms, absolutely. This would be a great system for that type of application. Anywhere where you have more structure to your meeting and you need to kind of provide that intelligibility across the board and control of the meeting, this is a great product for that.
This is a great product for any room where them asking for voice lift is a ridiculous notion, which is a lot of rooms.
Yeah, absolutely. So the ability to have microphone and loudspeaker in one, I don't have to worry about zoning loudspeakers or worry about, is my loudspeaker above me going to feed back into my microphone? This is all in one. This is solution off the shelf, essentially. You don't have to create anything. You don't have to go to many catalogs to come up with this sort of hybrid solution. It really gives you the capability to just drop something in, run some cable back to your central unit, and you're off to the races.
And you're saving a ton of money in programming costs.
Absolutely. Yes?
For the voting with MXC on the units that have the capacitive touchscreen, that's capable of being 5 buttons. Is it customizable to 2 or 3 as well, or is it always going to be 5?
It is customizable, yeah. Yep.
You can program that pretty much any way you want.
Yeah.
With number of buttons, whether you want to have a quorum set, so if you haven't got enough people present, it won't let you start voting.
Yeah.
The biggest example is the Georgian parliaments, where we have a DOS system in there. They, in their constitution, have to have 31 different types of votes for depending on what they're voting on. I don't know why. They've obviously got not enough time to actually govern, but to make these rules up. But they've got 31 different types of votes built into them.
Thank you. What was that, Mr. Peden?
So they've got a button that says kind of, but it's Tuesday afternoon, I don't know.
Later on this afternoon, when we look at the voting, I do, because it obviously bothers me being British, we do have a Brexit Schmexit vote set up. Basically, it doesn't matter what you choose, you're still in trouble.
Okay. So we talked a little bit about power requirements on the unit, and this is the address for the web-based configuration tool that gives you the ability to really show or indicate, how many units you can run off of a single cable run from your central unit. So dcslan.sure.com is this tool. You can create a login, you can save your files so that you can go back and recall them if you need to, and you will get an indication. You will get, red, you will get, yellow when you're kind of approaching that area where you're going to overload the system in terms of power requirements, and you can basically kind of create these system configurations with different cable lengths that you can then confirm, will you be able to provide, 10 stations on a cable run with X amount of cable. So a really great tool so that we don't have to sit here and add up the math and then subtract the different voltage requirements of each of the units. So this is just a quick slide that gives you the pricing of the units, and this is just our map price. So this is our street price for the system. And I'm not going to dive into this too much because this is accessible to you from our friends at SK Mac. But essentially, feature license and pricing, this is going to just give you an idea of what it costs to purchase those feature licenses and then some of the software components that are available with the system. So if we do a basic 24-channel or 24-station conferencing solution, we've got our central unit. Of course, we've added our feature license 6000 and some goosenecks. A standard street price cost for 24 stations is just under $24,000. So keep that in mind. If we're adding any software capability to the system, it's going to bump up to just 26 and change, essentially. So keep in mind that this is, again, it's a really cost-effective solution for many applications where you require voice lift, more structured meetings, really adding intelligibility overall to the system. And that's it for the overview of MXC. This was just kind of designed to give you an idea of the hardware and just give you an overview of what we're going to talk about later this afternoon. We're going to really dive deeper into some of the features, some of the software that's built into the system, and some of the additional capabilities that Software 6000 offers. We'll talk a little bit about the camera control as well that we've got here set up and the streaming. If there's any questions on basic functionality or overview of the system, I'm happy to take your questions.
Is there another control unit, central control unit for the MXC series, or is it always going to use the DIS CCU?
So it will always use the DIS CCU with that feature license 6000. We tried to keep it, one central unit for as many products as we could, so we don't have a ton of different SKUs. And maybe you have a 5900 system installed and you want to add, you want to upgrade your system. You require some voting that needs to be recorded now. Really all you need would be the new MXC stations, feature license 6000, and maybe some software. Great question. Thank you. Okay. No other questions? Crystal clear? All right. Okay, I think we have, Michael, do you know what time lunch is? Or Tim?
Yeah, I think it is 12. We've got a few minutes. We'll go check on it.
So we've, okay.
Break, perhaps.
Okay. Yeah, if nobody has any other questions about the product, the series?
Is there a way we can get all of the slide decks from today?
Yes. Yes, we can get that to you.
Yeah, the slide decks this morning for the rep summary, these will be kind of if you remember RepFest, these are updated from, yes, such a long time ago. These are updated decks from that, so this will all be available to y'all, and the same thing that we can make available to you in a PDF.
So the answer is yes, we will have it, and you can ask us for it.
But don't ask Todd.
Ask Todd. Okay, I guess we can break if there's no other questions. We will come back at 1. Food is at noon. We'll come back at 1.
1 o'clock is right.
All right, cool. 1 o'clock.
And for those that did not leave a business card with me, if you leave it up front, don't forget, please. Thank you. Here you go.
Very good.
So I got it all set up with this. Just put caffeine, $2, sugar, water, sparkling water out there. Like, it's like I'm pumping this thing. I know the one you took the picture.
That's what we saw on YouTube.
Yeah, it was, so there's nobody there, nobody able to meet you last night?
No, I called, I did it this morning.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I was gonna do some of it last night, you know, when I'm just doing the daylight. It wasn't particularly awful, but I tell you what, that big one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you follow down or did you bring it?
I followed it.
You were in front of it.
My only worry was that thing was just a little hot. So, and the floor is not ridges, so the ductwork kind of, they don't want to stay straight sometimes, and if that comes out of the back angry, it. Actually, that almost happened we were doing it with Jack. So
Hell yeah. Is it still the warehouse?
No, it's in the landfill right
No,
now.
I never saw
That
that.
thing up. The update was like, the wheels were almost too wide to put on the ramp, number one.
We had to move them.
Yeah. And then they broke. So they broke off. Then the brake just snapped.
Not serious. That's somehow you do. Yeah.
So we're gonna use these.
Let's go. Ron, pretty good job. I mean, exactly.
This will read the data right off of it.
For the tables. 6,000.
If we were to update Tim Cornish into the participant table, then it would work. So that's why. So anyway.
When did you ask?
This is for your guys.
That's not speaking. It's creeping. It's not creeping.
What we can do is come back.
So, I called them all in.